Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. That means I've got a voice. You've got a voice, of course, with your comments, suggestions, and questions. And, of course, we bring in the best bloggers, broadcasters, and writers in the industry, including Brent Beard. You can join him on First Coast News as the college football analyst and also as the co-host of College Sports Today. Brent, how are you doing tonight?
Well, I'm doing well. It's good to be with you. It's a great time of year. We just finished hoop season. We've got the Masters going on, but the main thing we're interested in would be probably Arkansas, Ole Miss, and Auburn in those spring games that are coming up this weekend. We just finished with South Carolina last weekend, and I am looking forward to going to the Florida and Bama game back to back. So that should be a lot of fun.
Yes, it's amazing. I worked in Mississippi for 6 years covering Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and Alabama, and the rest of the SEC by extension. And it's always football season.
Yes, absolutely.
Regardless of how good the baseball is and the other sports. And you can look at the tournaments and the championships in the other sports, whether they be tennis, basketball, wherever it is, girls basketball, women's basketball, and the SEC is just as good as anyone else across the country. But football is where the heartbeat is. So let's mention Alabama. Why don't we just go to the top right there? And this quarterback competition, of course, is in play with Jalen Hurts. And I think for Alabama Nation, for the fans, they don't see it as a competition because of what Tua Tagovailoa produced there in the national championship game. But just your thoughts about another Alabama team that should be primed and poised to take it all.
Well, obviously they lose a lot on defense, but this is a team that truly reloads every year. And I know everybody's interested in the quarterback situation, but I think when you break this thing down into units, there's some real concern about the secondary, and I think that's why. And I don't think he's going there, but they were even experimenting with Devontae Smith, who caught the touchdown pass in the championship game in the secondary in order to do that. So that's a group that needs a whole lot of work, and that's going to be interesting to see what they do in the spring. You wonder what they might do with a guy like Trayvon Diggs, who I know is hurt a little bit right now. Could they move him back and forth a little bit? But there's no doubt everybody's looking at the quarterback situation. I do think Tua is a guy. I think he's got a skill set. And as much as I respect Jalen Hurts and what he's done at this point with only losing 2 games, and I do think they can get Hurts involved with the offense. I would make Hurts Hines Ward or Cordell Stewart and play him a little quarterback, running back, receiver, even let him return kicks a little bit, because Tua just has the instinct to look off safeties and cornerbacks, which is what was able to win the championship game. So that's a help. But what's also interesting in this, when we dig into it a little bit, Mac Jones is a kid from Jacksonville. He was a Kentucky commit, and then he uncommitted, went decommitted, went to Alabama. And I'm not saying he's going to play a lot, but the reality is, as you know, in this league, you got to have healthy quarterbacks, don't you? And you got to have a deep roster, whatever it is. So I'm still wondering if maybe they don't go out and it still end up getting a graduate transfer just to have the depth. But at this point, and we'll see coming up in a couple of weeks, I still think Tua is going to be the guy.
Yeah, a few things you mentioned there caught my ear. One being, of course, the quarterback situation. I'll start right there. And Tua should be the guy, you would think, based on the performance. And I know it's a limited sample size, but it was under the most dire circumstances that for him to pull through as a freshman in that circumstance, down 13, and then later in overtime behind the sticks after he took the sack, and to make that kind of throw. You just see the college quarterback written all over Jalen Hurts versus not an NFL type quarterback today, but the potential to be an NFL style quarterback in Tua, and what he's able to do with all the things that you just mentioned, with the anticipation, the throwing in the tight window, and that NFL type style arm and passing threat.
Absolutely. And the thing that Tua can do that a lot of guys can't do is he can throw guys open. I covered the Alabama-Tennessee game last year, and there were a couple of plays where he was able with his feet to delay in order for his receivers to get open, probably 30, 40 yards down the field, threaded the needle. Now, the most incredible thing, and you probably remember this, you remember the Vanderbilt game when he basically, how would you describe that? I mean, it was almost like he immediately turned sideways and was able to deliver the ball on the money. I mean, the reality is, how many guys that we cover during the fall can do that?
So you mentioned something else about Nick Saban's propensity to take that first, maybe third to half of the spring session and start to become the mad scientist, move some pieces and parts around and play around and figure out, hey, can this safety play outside linebacker or vice versa? And he likes to do that. And who can argue with the results?
Really? Absolutely. Now, again, as we mentioned, Devontae Smith probably not going to play in the secondary, but it doesn't hurt just to see what these guys are going to be able to do. And I think another thing that he's going to take a look at is the kicking position, and do a little bit of experimentation with that too. The amazing thing about Saban is that people never understood, and I've had a lot of conversation about that. Some schools just struggle with this. It's why they cannot have a consistent kicker. I mean, that there are no Van Tiffins or Michael Proctors out there right now, or so it appears in the kicking game. Oftentimes, I watch some of these YouTube things like you do, and it really doesn't matter to me if they kick at 70 yards, either on a tee or without a tee. The reality is, can you kick a 30-yarder in the national championship game with the game on the line? That's really all that matters, right?
Yeah, and you mentioned it's just odd to think about Alabama's issue in finding consistency at that position, considering that if you look at NFL rosters, you see all sorts of place kickers who hail from Group of Five schools and FCS schools. And why can't Alabama find one of those guys every 3 to 4 years?
Yes.
Seems kind of odd.